All right. Welcome, everyone. We're excited to see you tonight on another Empower Hour. Our focus, our topic tonight is the NTEU Legislative Department and what's happening legislatively. And I know that we're all very curious about all the things that are happening. So we want to get quickly to our guest. Before we do that, I'll just introduce myself really quickly. I am Stephanie Snow. I am the NTEU organizer that's been working with the Pacific West region. Also on the session tonight, my colleague Lee Fisher, who you'll be talking to a little bit later. And our special guest from the NTEU Legislative Department this evening is Matt Sowards. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Matt. If you'll just introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about the NTEU Legislative Department, give us some updates on what's happening, and then we'll get to some Q&A in a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Happy to do that. Happy to be here and to talk about all the work we are doing in DC on behalf of our NTU members. So let me begin just by way of introduction. My name is Matt Sowards. I am one of the legislative representatives working in our national headquarters office in DC. We in the legislative department have a small team of lobbyists who work to basically tell the stories of NTU members to Capitol Hill. We try to bridge that gap between folks like you who are on the ground and you're seeing, things happening every day, and the policymakers who have oversight authority and appropriations authority and write legislations that impact you and not just your agency, but your pay and benefits and workplace rights and protections. So some of the things that we will do things like write legislation, we'll write amendments, we will review legislation that has been introduced and is pending before the various committees and subcommittees on the Hill. We write testimony and letters, we engage in grassroots advocacy campaigns, which I think we're going to be talking about a little bit later, and how our NTU members can engage in that. We've also had instances where, we have testified, or, the national president has testified in front of the congressional committees. So we do prep work for that as well. Some things recently that we have been engaged in, NTEU was leading the fight to preserve federal employees' pay, benefits, and workplace rights during budget reconciliation, when there was a whole slew of attacks on everything from your retirement to your I lost my train of thought there. I'm sorry. You're attacking your first premiums and increasing the amount that you're paying for your benefits. There were also proposals on the Senate side that would have charged you, or pardon me, charged the union for deducting your dues from paychecks. So they really went after the whole menu of options as it comes to federal workers in reconciliation, and NTEU's legislative department was able to fight off every single one of those attacks and make sure that none of those harmful provisions made it into HR1 that was eventually signed by the president. We also were leading the fight to get a permanent pay fix for federal wildland firefighters that was signed into law in March, as well as repealing the windfall elimination provision and government pension offset that penalize public workers and reduce their Social Security benefits. We got that repealed the very, very end of last year, end of December. It was signed early this year, right before President Biden had left the White House. So a couple of things recently going on that were, big items that our department worked on, advocated on behalf of our members, and saw some real successes. But I know what's more than likely front and center on everyone's mind right now is what's happening in regards to the shutdown, and when are we getting the government open. So I know I don't have to tell you all that we are sitting at day 21 of the government shutdown. The longest shutdown happened during President Trump's first term, was 35 days. So we're not quite to that record-breaking number yet, but we're getting awfully close. The two two sides are still pretty entrenched in their positions, in that House Republicans and Senate Republicans have said that they have passed a clean CR and don't intend to negotiate with Democrats at all. Democrats are maintaining that it is important to have a fix for the Affordable Care Act subsidies that are about to expire and would cause approximately 20-some million ACA policyholders to see their premiums double going into next year. So those notices should be going out in the next couple of weeks if there is not a subsidy fix to make sure that that cost doesn't go up for consumers. There has been one meeting so far between the majority minority in the House and Senate and the White House that did not go particularly well a few weeks ago. There was Leader Jeffries and Leader Schumer have both requested meetings with the Speaker and with the Majority Leader in the White House that have been denied or ignored. The Senate continues to vote on the same continuing resolution package. So the same thing that's failed a number of times already is what they bring up. And it has thus far mostly been a party line vote. 3 Democrats have voted for the continuing resolution, but 1 Republican has voted no. So even if that 1 Republican would have voted yes, they would have still fallen short of the 60 vote threshold to break a filibuster and pass the House passed bill. So now, as of earlier this week, there have been some rumblings on Capitol Hill about having a longer term continuing resolution to open the government again and get past, either the next couple of months or the entirety of this fiscal year, because the CR that the House passed only runs through November 21st, which is rapidly approaching. So we are in a situation where they still have to finalize funding for the remainder of the fiscal year, even if we open the government up, even if we pass what the House wants to do. There still has to be a conversation and an agreement on the remainder of fiscal 26 funding, which has not happened yet. So there have been discussions so far this week, at least among some of the rank and file members, not necessarily the leadership, about doing a longer term CR, possibly running through the end of the fiscal year. Those are still very preliminary, so it's not like we expect to see bill text, this week or even over the weekend, but those conversations are at least happening. Also of note, as of today, still the House remains in recess. Speaker Johnson has kept the House of Representatives gavelled out since September 19th. That was the day they voted on the continuing resolution, and they have not been in session since then. He has also made sure that the committees are not meeting, so no business is being conducted in the House of Representatives right now, other than what's called a pro forma session, where they gavel in for a few minutes. There are a handful of resolutions that get introduced, then they gavel out. The whole thing takes 10 to 15 minutes. But Speaker Johnson maintains that the House has done its work, and it's up to the Senate to do something to open the government. It's still TBD as to whether or not anything short of the Senate passing the House's CR would get Mike Johnson to reopen the House and come to the negotiating table. So everyone seems to be pretty dug in at this point on their different positions. So I know that's not very uplifting at the moment, but that is the reality, at least tonight on Capitol Hill. But I'm happy to answer more questions, answer anything specifically you guys have. I mean, I'm happy to give the gossips and rumor mill that we hear, but I want to make sure that I'm being mindful of your time and answering things that y'all care about.
Matt, would you mind touching on, we had NTEU e-bulletin go out today to NTEU members, and in it, it talked a little bit about the Federal Employee Civil Relief Act. Would you mind just kind of giving a brief description of what that is?
Sure, let me.
Sorry, I kind of sprung that question on you, but I was just reading it right before we got on the session, the e-bulletin.
That is completely fine. It is definitely one that we have endorsed, and I believe we endorsed it again this time. It was a legislation that had previously been introduced during the last shutdown. So this one would make sure that there are protections in place for folks who are impacted by a shutdown and face harmful actions like evictions or having property repossessed. So I don't know the entire ins and outs of this one specifically. It's one that my colleague Jennifer covered, not me. So I just know kind of like the top level items there.
Great, thank you. Anybody if you have questions, you can pop those into the chat or just raise your hand and and we'll field those in real time. While we're waiting for some questions, Lee, would you want to move on to talking about our legislative action night? And then I believe you had someone who wanted to say a few words as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. So if you haven't heard, we have a really exciting way for you to get plugged in with what we're talking about tonight through taking legislative action, making calls, writing letters, excuse me, and reaching out to your elected representatives to talk as an NPS employee, as a constituent, what all of these things mean and what protecting your mission means. This is a chance for us to have a collective kind of impact of NPS employees all calling together at the same time, coming together to write messages. So that's going to be Thursday night at 5:30 Pacific, 6:30 Mountain Time. And that's going to go for 2 hours. We'll have programming throughout that time. It'll be time for you that you can make your calls, you can write your letters. We'll have templates for emails. We'll have scripts for calls. We'll have districts mapped out. So we'll have everything you need. You can just show up and get plugged in, and we'll be there to support you and cheer along the way and have some fun while we're doing it. So that's this Thursday night. And then also wanted to make a plug for our survey. If you have not heard about the NPS survey that we've sent out, trying to find out what people's priorities are, what people care about, and what people want to learn more about. I dropped that link in the chat. And so you can fill that out. It's just a short, I think like 12 questions. And if you want to get more involved, there's a way to leave in your contact information so that we can reach out to you, so that we can get you plugged in even more. And with that, I think that's perfect time to hand it over to Travis to talk about why he's gotten involved.
All right, thanks, Lee. So
Awesome.
just wanted to say, I support unionizing as it's one of the few ways we as employees can express our rights through a legal pathway. And given as we're federal employees, that's a challenge that we face. And then, we've had benefits such as expansion of family leave. And this year alone, we've seen the RIFs being halted, the reinstatement of employees, some of the stuff that Matt has mentioned earlier. And that strong legislative presence allows all of this to happen by having our voice be heard. Like Lee just said, there's survey finding out exactly what we're wanting out of this union that we're putting together in our various regions. And then I also wanted to say personally, it's with how challenging this year has been, it's being an organizer has allowed me to channel my thoughts into action and help improve all of our working situations. And it's also helped build a killer community of folks with similar goals in mind. And I've met more people this year that I've never interacted with in our office and throughout the park. So that's been a side benefit of this whole effort is the community it's built between all of our Park Service folks.
Thanks, Travis.
Someone dropped into the chat about wanting an update, Zeke, wanting an update on the status of the AFG lawsuit and the shutdown RIFs. And yes, you are correct in that as of now, NTEU is not part of that litigation. I do know that there will be some updates on the lawsuit itself and some other things coming out either later tonight or tomorrow. And that's about all that I can say right now. I don't know if Lee or Matt, you have anything to add to that. I know that it's been a frustrating waiting game over the weekend, and since last week when the judge issued that TRO, and people are just unsure how it's going to affect them or if they're going to be included in that. And I've been kind of fielding questions by, using the same line, like there is information to come. There is a strategy around how all of the unions are handling not only that lawsuit, but all of the lawsuits we're involved in. And NTU is actively part of that strategy. And so I can't say too much about it because I don't know that much about it in terms of the exacts, but I have been told that we will be having some additional information in regards to that. It'll probably be in the morning, either late tonight or in the morning. And then I don't know if anybody has anything, any of Lee or Matt, if you want to add to that at all.
You said it how I would have said it.
The question was, is NTU trying to become a litigant to this suit or file our own lawsuit? Both of those options have been examined very thoroughly from what I understand, and the decision or what everyone in NTU has chosen as the best route. That's going to be forthcoming in the next few hours or overnight. And so we'll know which of those tacks, if those tacks are the way that NTU chooses to go. Any other questions for any of us on the call? Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying I can't speak to the litigation as I'm not in counsel's office, but I can tell you that all of the unions are engaging in advocacy on this together. So even if we're not in this lawsuit or if we join or don't join, again, I just don't know because that's not my department. We are regularly doing joint meetings with the other federal unions, with the AFL-CIO, with NAGE, NEFI, AFGE, SEIU, IFPTE, and others on the Hill, working to get the government reopened and making sure that folks get paid. So even again, I can't say whether or not we will join or not join the litigation, but that doesn't mean that we aren't engaged in other forms of advocacy with our brother and sister unions.
Well said. Matt, can you speak on just a little bit on what federal employee rights are for advocacy to make these calls or to write their elected leaders?
Yeah, I mean, the general guidance that we give is that you need to, just make sure that you're not using government time, government resources, or be on government property. So, if you are, on leave before work, after work, even, at an offsite union meeting, you are completely okay to again, use your personal phone to, make a phone call to your member of Congress, to write an email to your member of Congress. You can take leave and and go on hill meetings or something if you want to, or hill zooms or something. I know you're away from DC, but you can engage in all sort of protected First Amendment activity as long as you're not running near or afoul of things like the Hatch Act. And to make sure you're not is to just again make just to have those very general practices of not on government time, not on government equipment, not on government location, property, anything like that. But there other aside of from that, there's no prohibition on your ability to advocate on behalf of yourself or your chapter members.
Can they advocate as NPS employees?
They absolutely can. I think that is one area that is particularly impactful because you're able to talk about your experiences as a frontline worker and tell folks, particularly in the authorizing committees and the appropriators, where there are gaps and where you can actually use resources on the ground. The example I see in the notes you're talking about rent, I know that one specifically, there was a bill in the previous Congress from one of the members from Utah that would have done some work on rent stabilization, but it didn't go as far as I think some of us would have liked, and would have done a public-private partnership to get housing at hard to fill. I think it was hard to fill parks and locations. But I am aware. I know that even the DC chapter has talked to me a lot about rent prices and how that is a problem for NPS employees. But that is a great example of where the uniqueness of your job is important for them to hear directly from you about NPS issues and where there should be additional resources placed.
Questions? Other questions? Feel free to drop off mute or put them into the chat. Oh, I think that's a really probably relevant question. That your housing is government provided and your internet generally, can they use their own personal equipment if that is provided? If they are in the housing that's provided.
My understanding is still yes. I can follow up with OGC tomorrow morning and forward an answer to Stephanie and Lee, just to triple confirm that. But my understanding is that still counts as offsite.
Do we ever partner with agencies to advocate for something that the agency also is looking for?
Yeah, well, we have in the past. I don't know that we will during the current administration. But, I can give you an example. It's not NPS, but I can tell you that, one of the things I've done just in my time at NTEU has been working with CBP on a retirement fix that only the population of impacted employees are very narrow, but it's something the agency can't do administratively on their own. So we have kind of like jointly been working with Congress to get a legislative fix kind of like over the finish line that would give them the authority to make the tweak that they need to tweak to positively impact a handful of officers. But that is an area where we have an interest that's brought to us by our membership, and the agency reviews it and says, yeah, no, this is correct. We don't have the authority under existing statute to do this on our own. And they have, endorsed the idea and allowed us to, tell the Hill that the agency, the secretary and commissioner support this as well. So those instances have been helpful. It's not unheard of that we would partner with the agency sometime, not all the time, but on a handful of issues that has definitely happened.
Thanks for sharing.
I'd say another one closer to Department of Interior was getting a pay fix for the wildland firefighters. Like that was something that was very important for the previous administration as well as our BLM chapters. So, working with the administration to get Congress to finalize that legislation and get it over the finish line and actually signed into law, so that those folks get compensated more fairly was another big issue.
Can you say what that one was again?
Yeah, it was a permanent pay fix for federal wildland firefighters. They had seen a temporary salary increase in the infrastructure law, but it was only for 2 years. And the 2 years were ideally supposed to give Congress time to debate, discuss, and implement a permanent pay fix. And as all of being federal employees, much like with the government funding situation, Congress just does not do that. They wait until the absolute last second to do anything. So we were successful in getting a few extensions of the existing program into continuing resolutions whenever they were passed, just to keep lights on. And then most recently, back in March, we were able to incorporate a pay fix bill that permanently increases the GS levels of 1s through 14s for the wildland firefighters, incorporated into law via that continuing resolution. But it took the raises they had been given and made their GS scale more equivalent to what they had been. So we didn't see folks see a pay cut or go over the cliff where they would be losing money after having it for 2 years.
Yeah, that's huge. I see there's a question in the chat, kind of going back to the previous question about working with agencies. Do you work with nonprofits like the National Parks Conservation Association, which does political advocacy?
I have not, other than when we were doing reconciliation, because there was a provision that would have charged any recipient any 501cs 3, 4, or 5 who is a recipient of like a paycheck deduction, a 10% administrative fee. So for us, it would be if you have your dues deducted via payroll, the union would have been charged a 10% administrative fee. But it also was broad enough to include charities, hospitals, organizations, universities, anybody who had a tax status of the 501cs 3s, 4s, or 5s. So we did reach out to a number of nonprofits, to universities, to foundations, anybody who has a charitable giving arm, because they would have also been hit with this, particularly those who are main beneficiaries of the combined federal campaign. It usually happens at the end of the year, making sure that they know that they would be charged like 10% of whatever the donation is. So we did work with them. I do remember the national park group whenever we were doing the reconciliation stuff. I've not worked with them directly on some of this legislation, but I have talked to their folks about like impact of cuts. So which they have, I know, published like what cuts to park staffing, what cuts to the park budget would mean for like user services and what like guest services and what that experience would be if you drastically reduce the resources that park employees have and the park system has, what that looks like if you're just trying to be a park visitor and bring your family to tour one of these, you know, fantastic locations. So I hope that we can do more work in the future with them, particularly on the funding question. They had a really great analysis of the president's budget proposal for Department of Interior when it came out, because they dropped the budget proposal, or pardon me, the skinny budget request, something like a Thursday or Friday evening, and by Sunday morning, the Conservation Association had like a really in-depth analysis of it out, which was super useful.
So Matt, you heard obviously that we're doing an action night on Thursday evening. Is there any particular topic or advocacy item that we should focus on or that you feel is super important that we kind of all rally behind, or a group of items, topics?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a bit of a choose your own adventure stuff happening here, right? I mean, the biggest thing right now would be open the government. So open the government, make sure that not only you open the government, you follow the law in providing back pay for all federal employees. So it's a be compliant with that 2019 law that ironically enough President Trump had signed just a couple of years ago. But even if you want to get more specific into NPS related legislation, we have an Action Center letter on the Federal Retirement Fairness Act, which would allow for time served during temporary or seasonal status to count towards your first retirement, which was an issue that was raised by a member of the Washington, the headquarters NPS chapter. So that's on our Action Center. We have stuff on general fair pay. So if you want to do a letter on the Fair Act, advocating for an equitable raise cost of living adjustment next year instead of the 1% that the president's authorized, that is on our Action Center. But you can also just be super generic and keep it straightforward with we need to get a deal together, open the government, let us go back to work, and make sure we get paid.
Thank you. That's helpful. Any other questions this evening? Oh, I know that this has been a big issue for our law enforcement folks about reclassification. And I'm not sure, Jared, exactly what your question is about that. Are you just asking if we are currently advocating over that, or what is specifically your question about the reclass, Jared, if you don't mind popping on?
Yeah, sorry, it wasn't greatly thought out thought there. I guess I was just wondering, like, what's NTEU's experience with getting different job series reclassified under something more appropriate? For us right now, we're just kind of in the process of filing us to ask to try to be converted over to something more appropriate, like the 1801 series that pretty much all other federal law enforcement's under.
I mean, I can tell you what we have done on legislation side. I think the general answer is more in the realm of like our negotiations department, and not in like my jurisdiction. But I can tell you that we have endorsed and worked on legislation like the Law Enforcement Officer Equity Act, which does in a roundabout way what you are looking for your folks. And this legislation, which is authored by Congressman Andrew Garbarino, who is a Republican and chair of the Homeland Security Committee in the House, would give that enhanced retirement status to a number of um, people who have law enforcement activity but are not currently federal law enforcement officers. So I mean, it's a whole slew of like VA police, DoD police, seized property specialists in DHS, IRS revenue agents. I'm not entirely sure the entire list, but that's definitely the type of legislation that we have worked on and pushed for in the past, and continue to push for. Specifically, though, about like getting things done. I think that the Ryan over negotiations would have a better answer than me, because they have done a lot of reclassification work in CBP at the bargaining level. That's just not kind of a component of like our NTEU space that I do a ton of work on.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
Matt, can you tell me the name of that legislation that you were just talking about? I didn't catch it.
It's the Law Enforcement Officers Equity Act. It's also just been abbreviated LEO Equity, LEO Equity.
I see there's a question in the chat about step increases. Um, Not sure if this is a congressional issue, but and if you're familiar, but the seasonal employees, the GS, do not get step increases concurrent with their time served.
Yeah, so I can ask Jennifer Tyree about that one. Jennifer covers pay for the department, so that's just not one that is in my issue area or expertise. But I know who does cover it, and I'm happy to ask her.
Awesome. Thank you. Other questions? For federal employees who are outside of the DC area, what are your recommendations for how they kind of stay plugged in and connect with their members of Congress, as well as does NTEU help with connecting with local elected leaders?
Yeah, Stacy Casimiro in our grassroots mobilization department does a great job of providing that service to our NTEU members. So let me first just make a real quick plug for making sure that if you do become an NTEU member, that you sign up for our action alerts. So make sure that we have personal emails, personal phone numbers. I'm sure Lee and Stephanie, you have a bunch of that as well with all the organizing activity that you're doing. But just so that we have ways to communicate with you that, again, is kind of like off government email addresses, off government equipment, off government servers. Just trying to be extra careful with that. But we have a mobilization department that works with our members, and the whole goal is to help you be grassroots lobbyists. So connecting with your members of Congress, figuring out when events are happening, when there will be town halls, when your member of Congress is having, any kind of meet and greet in district or on the Hill that you can get plugged into or go to, and then helping you attend those meetings and feel, give you talking points, feel like you're prepped and able to go and have conversations with your elected representatives at home. And that is, a big part of, being, part of that effective grassroots mobilization unit. So I welcome that. We love doing it. So, if that is something that interests folks, we absolutely can make sure that you are plugged in with people on the ground in your states and districts, and not just during legislative conference, not just during a training up here, not, one time a year, but actually developing relationships, with district staffers, with folks at home, so that, they know you know them, and you all can work on, these really important issues that impact you locally.
Love that.
Yeah, actually, Lee, you raise a good question. I feel like I should plug the other parts of our department. That I do legislation, mostly focused on Capitol Hill. I mentioned Stacy Casimiro, who is our mobilization director, who coordinates with all of our chapters and chapter members and tries to get them plugged in at the grassroots level. We also have the political side with Maram Abdelhamid, our political director, and Kelly Close, the political assistant, who do all the campaign side stuff. So they do your TPAC. If you've heard us talk about TPAC, they raise the TPAC dollars and make those contributions and work with candidates and work on candidate questionnaires. So like even before we get to a stage where we're giving endorsements, we're making sure that they know about federal employee issues, and they're going to be supportive of federal workers and supportive of your pay and benefits and workplace rights if they're elected to Congress. And all of that, all of us working together in our legislative political mobilization department. So all, trying to again, carry the stories of NTU members and federal employees to policymakers, whether it's at home, on the campaign trail, or on the Hill.
That was great. I'm not seeing other questions in the chat here. Stephanie, do you have any that have come to you directly?
No, I don't. But this has been some really great information. I know it's just kind of scratching the surface of all the work that you do, in the legislative front, Matt. And if we have other questions come up after this, we'll communicate those to you and then get the answers back out to folks for sure.
Please do. I would just mention that it is it's 10:15 my time, so I'm a little sleepy. So if I am not coming across as clear as I would like, I apologize. But please do just either Stephanie, Lee, y'all are welcome to share my email directly with folks, or if you want to get questions and forward them over, that's also fine too. Whatever works best. If folks have questions, if something comes up that I can be helpful, that our department can be helpful, or you just want to get plugged in with Stacy or Maram, totally fine. Feel free to give me a shout. I'm happy to help.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm hoping to see everyone that's on this session on Thursday night for our action night, and please spread the word. We want this to be a big event so that it's, we're heard loud and clear, I think, and we have a chance to just really put the NPS voice forward in a big way. So there is a flyer that's circulating around. If you haven't, if you'd like to get access to that and you haven't seen it, just reach out to one of us or someone on your organizing committee. We certainly have plenty of folks that can help you get the information that you need to participate, or to get a group of people to participate. Sometimes it's fun to just kind of get everybody together in a room and just, do the thing, right? Make it a party. So yeah, we're hoping that we have a good turnout on Thursday night. We appreciate you being with us this evening. If you have any other questions for Matt, please get those to Lee or myself, and we certainly will get answers out to you. And then I'll let Lee, you have anything else to add before we go?
No, just I also hope to see everyone Thursday night. Thank you so much to Matt for joining us, sharing your experience, and we will see you all on the next Empower Hour, which is moving to Wednesdays, I believe, the next time. So Wednesday, November 5th. So we will see you all then. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Matt.